Yet another probe of something with the Trump name on it. New York's Attorney General has now subpoenaed Deutsche Bank for records related to 3 large loans that the bank made from Trump's company, or made to Trump's company, as well as a 4th loan Trump sought to buy the Buffalo Bills. Just last week, another New York agency subpoenaed Trump's longtime insurance broker. And all of this comes in the wake of Michael Cohen's testimony before Congress. Trump's former attorney was asked about this by New York freshman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortes.
I want to ask a little bit about your conversation with my colleague from Missouri about asset inflation. To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
Who else knows that the president did this?
Alan Weisselberg, Ron Lieberman, and Matthew Calamari.
And where would the committee find more information on this? Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes, and you'd find it at the Trump org.
Add this new investigation to the long list of other suits and cases against businesses. We're putting them up on your screen right now. Of course, Special Counsel Bob Mueller is leading the big Russia investigation. But the Southern District of New York also has several open cases, and some legal experts say they could actually pose a bigger threat to Donald Trump. And then there are also other federal cases involving Russia that are being handled by prosecutors in D.C. and Virginia. On top of all that, tomorrow morning, this guy, Paul Manafort, back in court for sentencing on the second case against him. Last week, a judge handed down a 47-month sentence, including 9 months of time served. That was well below the 19 to 24 years that prosecutors had been asking for. Tomorrow, Manafort could get an additional 10 years. And joining me now, former federal prosecutor Stanley Tuardi. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good evening.
Let me start with the James investigation in New York. She wants to subpoena the banks to get the records of what Donald Trump submitted to them. But how do we know what he's actually worth so that they can compare it to it? That's one of the big mysteries, is that nobody knows what he's worth.
Well, I think the fact is that the question is going to be the documents that they find from the bank in the first place. And I think and I'll come back to your question in a second. What is fascinating here is that we know that Michael Cohen cooperated with the Attorney General's office, that when he was sentenced, and part of his sentencing memorandum was mentioned that he had spent time not only with the special counsel, not only with the U.S. Attorney's Office of Southern District of New York, but the Attorney General, so that we know that that Mr. Cohen had access to information. We know he had access to the Attorney General, and we also know that Alan Weisselberg has been cooperating with the federal government in its investigation. And information can be shared back and forth between the two. So it's a painstaking effort, though. It's, first of all, let's find out what was submitted to the bank, then we'll follow up after that.
But it'll be easy enough to get the information from Deutsche Bank. They've now been subpoenaed. So they get the document of the loan application. What are they comparing that to any other documents he submitted for any other purposes? Or are they comparing that to what they think his net worth actually is?
Or they can be comparing it to documents that Trump and the Trump organization, I should say, had submitted to other agencies, other entities. And you start looking, okay, to Bank A, you submit these documents. To Bank B, you submit these documents. To another bank, you do something else, and you start comparing them. If you find that there are differences between and among them, that's where the fraud starts coming in.
People might be able to relate to this a little bit. I mean, somebody might have shaved a little bit off their income tax report, or a better one, when you submit for a credit card, you have to list your income. People may boost their income on that form to make sure they get the gold card or they get the black card or whatever the case may be. How much leeway does Trump get on something like this? If he's off by a penny?
It has to be material. The standard for fraud, it has to be material, okay?
What does that mean to the non-lawyer?
To the non-lawyer, it means it's significant. And it means that there's a big difference between what it is, and it's on a significant thing. If one has a wrong phone number in there, that's not material to what's being asked for. It's material if it affects the decision of the bank to make a loan.
So it has to be a significant discrepancy.
Right.
Deutsche Bank's already been investigated. 2 congressional probes, maybe not the best investigators, the congressional probes, but the state banking regulators also looked into it and they did nothing. How would this be different? Wouldn't we have found this from earlier investigations?
Not necessarily, because it, again, depends on what the focus is of that investigation. And here you have information from Cohen that might lead the government in a different direction than they've gone before. And again, bank regulators look at different things than prosecutors do.
Sure. I want to bring up the politics in all this, because Tish James campaigned on getting Trump when she was running for Attorney General. The quote was, "The biggest thing Trump has to fear is Mueller, Cohen, and Tish James." Effective on the campaign trail, but you know, Trump has had lots of practice going after New York attorneys general in the past. How would you respond to people who dismiss this investigation from Tish James out of hand simply because of the politics and because of her public statements about it?
I think that really it goes two ways, too. One is she does have the power of the attorney general and can use it. It's unfortunate that someone who's running for office uses running for office as a regulator, as someone who can bring charges against people, as I'm running to go after somebody. Because listen, we have a system of rule of laws here, and the rule of laws should be applied equally to everybody. And when you have a prosecutor putting a thumb on the scales of justice, that changes things and how things are done. And unfortunately, by her campaigning on that, it affects the public's response to all this. It really undercuts the legitimacy of what she was doing. And again, that's unfortunate on her behalf.
On the thermometer of how worried should Trump be, where does this go? Should he be more worried about Tish James than he is about the Southern District or Mueller or?
From a criminal justice point of view, I would be most worried of the Southern District of New York, because that's something that's going to go on and on even after he stepped down as president. From a political point of view, obviously the Mueller report and investigation and what happens with that is going to have a bigger impact on him politically. I think James is somebody who will be there and will be a pain, but I think probably I'll put it tertiary.
I want to jump onto the Mueller report quickly, because we're starting to get some weird quotes hinting that we might not get to see as much of it as I think people are anticipating. Adam Schiff relayed this quote from a Justice Department official that Justice may take a restrictive view of what it can share with either Congress or the public. How and why does Justice or the White House get to restrict the content of the report? Who gets access to it, and what can Democrats do?
Well, the Democrats in Congress can subpoena the report and try to get at it. Again, though, Attorney General Barr, when he was going through his confirmation hearings, was asked about this, and he said he would turn over as much as he could legally. There are certain restrictions upon what can be produced. Things that are grand jury, a person who goes into the grand jury, that person's testimony remains private and confidential until it's released through some sort of court order. Also, if there are, and again, part of what's going on is not only Trump's wrongdoing, but what's going on with the Russian collusion. Again, not necessarily with Trump himself, right, but that. And there, that Mueller will have been able to talk to sources, confidential sources, and he's not going to want to, nor will Attorney General Barr, nor will, I think, Congress want to burn sources. So I think it's going to be an iterative process here as to what can be released. And
then I saw this other quote from Randall Eliason, another former federal prosecutor. I don't know if
I don't know.
But he said to the Times, if you don't charge somebody, you don't write a report about it and release it to the public. That seems like an impossibly high bar, particularly because of the Justice Department guidelines that say you can't indict a president.
Yeah, I think that also what he's talking about is a non-presidential situation without a special counsel. Again, the special counsel was authorized to do certain things by Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein with a court order that was done. And I think some people have forgotten here, too, that part of this is not just to indict the president. And again, as you say, the Justice Department rules are that they will not indict a sitting president. But again, Mueller was asked to give a report on Russian influence on the election. And that's something that will be in a report regardless of whether or not there is an indictment or in the Justice Department rules.
You know, I think most people probably view Bob Mueller sort of like a private detective. Like, we've hired him, and he's going to tell us whether he's found something or he hasn't found something, and here's the photos that you did or didn't want to see, minus the photos. How off is that impression that people have?
I think it is off because Bob Mueller, as we've seen, and to his credit in this, has taken his mandate and followed his mandate directly. And it's going to be, I am going to give the report to the Attorney General that I've been responsible to give the report to, and that's what we're going to do. The bigger issue, I think, is going to be what will the Attorney General do? What will Congress get? And I certainly hope that at the end of the day, the American public gets to see what is out there so that they can make an informed decision about everything.
Stan Twardy, former federal prosecutor, really appreciate the insight. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We will take a quick break. When we come back, Growing Up Trump, the explosive new book that provides a behind-the-scenes look at the president's relationship with Ivanka. It's a much different story than perhaps the ones you're used to hearing.